Hello everyone. Today I thought I'd take a little bit of time to speak on my own work. I want to take a closer look at The Condemned, which is book 1 of my Ages of Ashea series, and just take a magnifying glass to it, sort of lifting up the curtain a little bit to how I wrote the novel, how I came up with the characters, how I decided on the plot, and how that plot will continue throughout the series. I should mention that this video and any subsequent ones I make will contain spoilers for The Condemned. So, if you don't want to have anything spoiled for you from book 1, I suggest turning off this video. However, it will not spoil anything from any of the other upcoming books, so rest assured, I won't give anything away for future events. So, why am I doing this? Well, I understand that as an unestablished author within the reading community, it's hard for people to take that leap of faith in picking up my work. Many times, new authors, especially indie authors that haven't been vetted by literary agents and publishing houses, have a hard time garnering that trust needed to have readers pick up their novels. My hope is that talking about my work and shedding some light on how I've done things and shedding light on my story will put some potential readers at ease that may have been considering whether to read The Condemned. This may end up becoming a series of videos, but for each one I plan on making them shorter, digestible videos clocking in around 10 minutes or so. Without further ado, let's begin. Where did the story begin? Or how did this story come about? And the answer frankly came from a drawing I made many years ago. If I could find it and I remembered, the image should be on the screen right now. Once upon a time, I used to be into drawing, painting, and the like, and as I let my mind wander one day, I came up with the living skeleton who touches a tree and makes it start decaying. And if you know anything about my book, you know that's the protagonist. The Condemned itself as a book has been in existence for nearly 10 years. And has gone through many iterations, revisions, and versions before landing in a spot that I felt was a correct spot for what I wanted it to be. But the premise for the main character, whose name is Baldane, all started with this drawing. From there, I built the backstory. Trouble with Baldane. Now, I'm going to admit my own initial inexperience here in saying that when I first wrote what would become The Condemned, I didn't know where it would all lead, why Baldane is the way he is, or who actually turned him into a skeleton. But as I continued to world build, I eventually figured all that out and now have a definite narrative arc within my head, which is also pieced together through my various notes for the Ages of Ashea universe. One thing I knew from the very start, though, was that Baldane wouldn't have any idea or clue as to who did this to him, nor would he have any idea of who he was before the start of The Condemned, because I wanted Baldane to go on an adventure. I wanted Baldane to have only clues, small bits and pieces to who he was before and who might have done this to him and why. So, how do you write a character that stays interesting who has no memories? That was perhaps the greatest challenge to crafting this story. We're all shaped by our past experiences. The things we've done, the people we know, our environment. Baldane has none of that. He is a blank slate. So what's someone to do who's a living skeleton with a curse that decays the living into dust at a single touch from his hand? He has to find answers. That is his greatest focus. But he also knows that he looks like a monster, and looking like a monster, despite not having a past to base his decisions off of, he doesn't want to be one. And that's Baldane's primary conflict within The Condemned. He knows people will be afraid of him. He knows how others might view him. He knows he's feared, but he doesn't want to lower himself to those fears. He has a desire to subvert others' expectations of him, and sometimes that can conflict with his goal of finding answers. So, as I wrote and rewrote The Condemned, I had to make sure that Baldane had motives, as any character in any story, but I knew it had to be more than just that he wants to find answers. As the story goes on, Baldane finds that inspiration to be more than who he appears to be. He meets several people who help guide his moral compass and who show him the importance of living and fighting for more than himself. The plot. As I mentioned, even when I completed the first draft of this book, I didn't know where it was going or why Baldane was a skeleton, or even why he had a curse and who gave it to him. Through a bunch of hard work, careful planning, and mapping out important story elements, I finally got it all worked out and rebuilt the story with my completed arc. Because from the very beginning, I wanted this to be a world that spanned more than just one book. By the way, this was a terrible idea on my part, because I set out to do this when I first decided to become an author. I definitely should have written some standalone things first to get that experience under my belt before tackling such a huge endeavor. But that's what I did. And I'll remind everyone that I'm not going to spoil things from other books, but for The Condemned, I wanted Baldane to get something back. I wanted there to be a piece of himself that he gets to retrieve, even if it's not everything. By the end of this book, he reaches part of his goal in what I hope to be a satisfying ending for book 1. So to get into this book spoiler territory, I want to give something of a synopsis, and then in the next video, I'll zoom in a little bit more about some of my world building things and some of my characters. Baldane, after awakening in the Aulean Grey Forest, rescues a boy and returns him to his parents in a village nearby. The boy's father once worked for a crime lord infecting the nearby city of Temlin, and told him that this crime lord, whose name is Rumian, has an old master named Quarren that might know something of Baldane's situation. The problem is that Quarren's an abandoned. Now, abandons are wizards who have been cut off from their use of magic. As people learn and study magic, two things can happen, but they generally happen when the magic they learn and use is done so in an abominable way. Things that most people would consider twisted and evil. But those two things that can happen are, 1, you begin to lose your mind, and 2, you can be wholly cut off from direct use of magic. Often those two things will go hand in hand, but starting to lose one's mind is sort of a warning sign that you're going too far and that you should stop. So if you're an abandoned, you have also wholly lost your mind. Alright, that was a bit of a tangent, but Baldane learns of Quarren pretty early on, and he also learns that Quarren is an abandoned pretty early on as well, which presents a problem. However, Baldane doesn't have much of a choice. He has to visit Quarren in hopes of finding some kind of answer, however small a piece of an answer that might be. He has to try. So, since Rumian operates just outside the city of Temlin, that's his first stop. On the way in, however, Baldane comes across an old blind man named Aeneas, who was once a member of a freedom-fighting group named the Knights of Blacklaw, who banded together many years ago in and around the city of Temlin during its height of corruption and villainy. As the last living member of the Old Order, Aeneas knows many things about many things, and in his conversation with Baldane, he directs him to Rumian's hideout, but also offers him a set of magical armor that will help him hide his skeletal form and aid him in his search for answers. And that set of armor is the same that Aeneas wore as the Knight of Blacklaw. So, Baldane infiltrates Rumian's hideout, but is captured. Held prisoner, he also meets a woman named Barda, who's another one of Rumian's prisoners. As Baldane quickly finds out, Barda is the granddaughter of Aeneas. As such, she tends to kick butt since Aeneas taught her much of what she knows, and she's sort of been this thorn in Rumian's side for a good long time. They team up, escape their bonds, and get Quarren's location from Rumian, then escape the hideout. Now, through a bunch of other stuff that happens, they reach Quarren's hideout, go through more stuff, and Baldane finds out that Quarren doesn't know everything about Baldane's situation, but knows enough to tell him that there's a big bad out there who used Baldane for a magical experiment that has something to do with the gods. Obviously, there's a few more details than that, but I don't want to spoil everything for you. From there, Baldane is going to have to learn whatever else he can and be patient for more opportunities to present themselves. Advised by Silstra, who is the sort of good deity who created the world and the inhabitants and who's responsible for giving the inhabitants magic in the first place. By the way, Silstra is the one who removes magic when someone who's using it for really bad things and causes them to become abandons. Baldane realizes that he still needs to learn some things and keep his friends close because they will be invaluable as he continues his pursuit of this big bad who caused Baldane so much grief. Just an added note, the bad deity or god is named Devaratos, and he is the god of the Deep Realm, and the Deep Realm is sort of this hellish type place. So whatever this big bad has planned, it involves Isilstra and Devaratos. And you're probably asking how in the world Baldane learned anything from Corrin, who's supposed to be insane. That's answered. I won't give it away, but it's answered. Though I may or may not explicitly explain it. You'll have to see for yourself. So, as you can see, Baldane goes on his journey and finds some part of his answer, and also begins a personal journey, or a hero's journey, if you will. Because he's sort of this blank slate character, he's working through his own loss of memories and identity, and figuring out what kind of person he wants to be and become. This story will span at least 2 more novels, but there are some other novels I'll be releasing that further build this universe and the stories surrounding Baldane. That's all I have for this video. I hope you've enjoyed a look into my world, and I'll see you in the next one where I'll talk more about the Condemned.